Trevor.
Hi everyone. Welcome to the Small Cap Discoveries conference call. We've got Dakota here and of course the host Paul Andriola. We're going to be hanging out with Dakota today to hear about what he loves in the market and what he's researching, but I'll let you, Paul, take it away.
Oh, you got it. So, Dakota, I'm going to start calling you my cipher guy, and and apart from this guy knows everything about cipher, probably more better due diligence. I've seen a lot of analyst coverage on a lot of stocks, but not only is he an amazing analyst, but he's also a world-class joggler of all things, and we can always find out exactly what's driven him to do that. But I think everybody's here to listen to Dakota talk about Cipher. Cipher, as everybody knows, is a company that we've followed for quite a while now. Got a number of shareholders or members that are shareholders of Cipher. I've personally known this company for years and years and years, and it's had a phenomenal run here of in the last year or so. But we've got Dakota here to tell us why he doesn't think this is done yet. There's a lot more to go, and a lot more upside. So I'm going to sort of turn it over to Dakota and quietly listen to this smart young man. And with that, Dakota, maybe give a 30-second snapshot of who are you, and maybe some of your background, and then we can jump into Cipher and have at it.
Um, Thanks, Paul, and Trevor. It's really nice of you to do this for me. Um, I mean, I'm just a retail investor. I've never been in the industry. My career is a weird one. I was in the nuclear navy. I worked on wind turbines and installed batteries, data centers. So it's like a mixed career, and I'm in my 20s. But I've always had a fun time reading about it's just it's just fun. Investing is fun. I find it enjoyable. And sort of the process in discovering Cypher initially, it started from chat. I was interviewing Jeffrey Hisham of Ready Shed Capital Corp with several investors, and I wanted to know that one of the person's impressions of them because he didn't own any stock, so he wasn't biased. So I just wanted to pick his brain, see what he thought of the guy. And from that conversation, this was in 2022, he told me to look into Cipher Pharmaceuticals. And initially, what I saw was this stable brand up in Canada. The most valuable cash flows in Cipher today are under the Apurus brand, because it's just this really high margin, like there's not even really any capex that they're using. And it was like just incredibly cheap business where it was at like a 40% free cash flow yield on the enterprise, right? And they were just accruing cash rapidly. So it was obvious there people were going to make money. And so I started to make it a big position. And as I did so, I needed to learn more about what like the drivers for this company were, because as nice as Appearance is, it's not a growth business for them. There was some recent news with some more common acne medications that might be decomposing into benzene. So maybe retinoids will grow from that. That's remain to be seen. But what I came across was they purchased this license from Moberg Pharma, I think back in 2018. And um, essentially, what I discovered was there's a very large end market for nail fungus. The estimates are the range of the estimates of the number of people that have this is wide. It's between 5 and 14% of the global population. So, you're talking about a range of people that's measured in the hundreds of millions. And Cipher on Cedar, they were disclosing that the majority of the economic value of this condition is owned by a topical called Jublia. It's owned by Bosch, and it makes sense as to why it has the majority of the market. That Bosch is really stretch pricing on that product as much as they could. And it's also one of the most, it is the most effective topical to treat nail fungus. Now, what's interesting here is that Lamisil, so oral terbinafine, Lamisil was the original brand name for oral terbinafine. I think it's gone off patent several years ago now. The majority of people that have this condition, they're old. They're like in their 50s, 60s, 70s. The product can cause liver damage. It's rare, but it says that on the label, and it turns a lot of people off. I've met people and sort of talked to them about this that have nail fungus. Surprisingly, when I quit my job to pursue investing and writing full time, my boss had nail fungus. So yeah, but that puts them off of taking it, and it interacts with a lot of medications. So just in general, the treatment rates for this condition are low, very, very low. It's something like 20% are even pursuing treatment. So a lot of infections that people have lasted for 10, 20, 30 years. People view this in some ways as a lifelong condition if they don't want to take uh, oral terbinafine. And I can't say I blame them because, it's not a comfortable drug to take, and why risk your life? It's a small risk, but why take the risk to treat something that's not hurting you? If it could cause liver failure. So the treatment rates for this condition are suppressed, and the topicals. It is not uncommon for someone to be on Jublia for years before they've cured their fungus. Visual responses to the drug take a long time, months. Normally, that's normal. And because it's so expensive and it needs to be applied daily, down here in the United States, a full prescription, which is typically a year, of Jublia costs $2,300 on average per nail. So the fungus spreads between your feet. No, it spreads through athlete's foot typically, and there's patient sort of like, I don't know what's the phrase, like surveys over large populations on what the normal number of infected nails are, and it's standard between like 4 with a standard deviation of 2. So in the US, a typical course of treatment of Jublia would cost about $10,000 for a patient if it took a year. Now, going to Cipher, because they have the license in Canada. If you go back to the significant issuer bid, Cipher Pharmaceuticals was required to do a valuation report for their business to make that transaction, so they could buy. I think they bought like 5% of the stock. In it are essentially management's assumptions for what Terclara is going to do for Cipher. And they modeled their operating income growing by something like 4 times over the course of a few years. I think when a lot of people saw that, they took that to be very aggressive. And you see growth assumptions out of that, like a microcap, and you're kind of left to wonder if someone's head's on straight, because it really is a lot of growth that they're projecting. But I think there's some reason to think that they're not, because they backed into the existing market. They essentially said they were going to take Jublia's economic value in the Canadian market. And I think now, at this point, I don't even know if they're necessarily aggressive, and their timeline might be a bit too long. The team that will be selling Terclara up in Canada is the same team that scaled Jublia in Canada. So that the team, the expertise is already there. I imagine most of the contacts that they use to scale that product already exists within whatever database they use. But more than that, um, the because treatment rates are so low, and the innovation of what makes this drug work is in the vehicle. It's what transports the terbinafine into the nail. We're going to go from a dynamic with treating nail fungus where the fastest a person could see responses with oral terbinafine, and you could start to see results in a few weeks. And it's absorbed systemically. So you're taking it orally, it's being transported through your cardiovascular system, I presume, and it's down into the nail matrix, and it begins to kill the fungus because it's a potent antifungal. The innovation was with the vehicle, and it transports the terbinafine into the nail at extremely high concentrations, and it gets there really quickly. So a lot of patients, and you can see this in Sweden today if you go and find them because it's being sold over the counter. You can see like a visual effect taking place in as little as like 100 hours. I think that is going to have some effect on the rate at which the product works and that it works more often. I think that is going to affect the number of people that pursue treatment, which means the end market for treating nail fungus may grow, and it may grow a lot. Um, it's hard to know across different markets. In the US, surveys show that less than 20% of prescribers actually like dispense a drug for people that visit for nail fungus. It might be different in Canada, but overall, it's an undertreated condition, and that's sort of like that's the pitch for Cipher. Just because this, even if they do a large acquisition, because they were quoting like 75 to 150 million dollars, which would really be quite large. I mean, that's their entire market cap today. And that's where things would go wrong for Cipher if they mess up that transaction. But even then, if this idea of expanding treatment rates is correct for Terclara, this will be over half of Cipher's earnings. So you could look at the financials all you want, but you really need to wrap your head around that product, I think, to understand Cipher. And that's where I'm at.
Fantastic. Listen, we've got a couple questions that we'll jump on in a second, but a couple questions that jump out at me right away is so Teclair is not launched into Canada right now, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
When do you anticipate it being launched?
So the second phase 3 is happening. The readout is happening in January of next year. The launch date after that is probably going to be 12 months. So early 2026 is when I would expect it. The reason for that trial is they're trying to change the label because it's believed that the vehicle has a hydrating property that is allowing water into the nail. If you go onto the Swedish pharmacies that are selling this product, one of their advisories, they say, is don't get your feet wet for 9 hours or something after application. And I think it's motivated by that thought that the vehicle is hydrating the nail. So what they're doing is they're titrating the dose after week 8. So they're going daily application for the first 8 weeks, and then once weekly application, because I think that the readout is going to be fantastic because they've studied like the concentration profile of the terbinafine in the nail, and it gets there and like it's like hundreds of times higher than conventional oral terbinafine that's being absorbed systemically. So they don't need to put it on every day for a year because it's already in the nail. But that's the timeline.
Have you done any modeling? I mean, you've talked about likely the sort of adoption rate is going to be higher than what we're currently seeing in the sector, and I would agree with you. I mean, it sounds much more appealing than what the current standard care is. But have you done any sort of examples like if they were to get double what what Bosch is getting right now, what does that do to numbers for Cipher?
I mean, if it's double the like the absolute values in dollars, that would be 180 million CAD in sales.
Hmm.
So I mean, just I think Cipher is assuming they have some amount of margin expansion from this.
Hmm.
Just because it's over their fixed costs and whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, you would see you would see at least $100 million cash flow
Yeah.
with that, which is, that would move the stock higher.
Yeah.
Um, the there's the caveat. So and you can actually, it's pretty nice actually. These come in 5 milliliter containers.
Hmm.
Um, if you apply it once daily to one nail for the first 8 weeks, and then once weekly, it actually comes to almost exactly one box per nail over an entire year for the
Hmm.
first 8 weeks, um, and then weekly thereafter. Um, so you can basically say one box per nail,
Hmm.
and then you find out, what's how many nails is typical. And there was I mean, the way you measure something can skew results on what you get from like a survey. But there was this large Polish patient survey from dermatologists where it was like 2,000 patients, and um, it was 4 nails with a standard deviation of 2. I don't know how skinny that or fat that
Hmm.
distribution curve was, but I'm just going to assume the average patient has four nails
Hmm.
infected, and bilateral infections are the most common. Um, so on both feet.
Hmm.
Um, so you can kind of go from there. The pharmacies typically um, mark up the price. Like in Sweden right now, they're selling it for 40 SEK wholesale. Online, I think it's like 375 SEK, which is like 37-40 dollars.
Hmm.
But the pharmacies typically double the price, and there's value added tax. So the thought is right now that they're receiving um, they're receiving 200 SEK between Alderma and Moberg. Cypher is probably going to retail this for around 100 CAD a box.
Hmm.
Um, so you can just kind of model it from there. Uh, yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then I mean, a couple questions I'm going to jump on here right away, but so they've only got the license for Canada.
Mhm.
Um, and my understanding is you're a shareholder of Moberg as well.
Both, yes, and
So
very heavy
yeah,
weighting, like
yeah.
80%.
So what's I mean, is there when you look at both those companies, which has more appeal or what's the difference in upside downside to both those right now?
Well, naturally, just because it started as a smaller company, right? I started buying Moberg at 7 SEK, and I started buying Cypher at 3 CAD.
Mm-hmm.
So just from like the initial cost basis, the return profiles were different. Because Moberg has global exposure,
Mm-hmm.
if the pharmaceutical goes well, naturally
They're gonna get
it's
yeah.
going to return more. Trevor asked who will be selling in the US. Greg said Moberg. That's half true.
Mm-hmm.
So Moberg intends to sell to podiatrists. They're going to essentially buy like a shell company, fill it with around 15 sales representatives that are going to
Mm-hmm.
sell into like podiatry to
Mm-hmm.
podiatrists.
Okay.
They will be licensing the drug to dermatology groups. Like they're going to run an auction after the phase 3
Mm-hmm.
is done. I'd imagine the announcement for who bought that license would come like 6 months at the most after.
Mm-hmm.
So someone else will be selling Terclar in the US. It could be Cipher. I really, really wanted Cipher Pharmaceuticals to buy Moberg.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen. I don't know why. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Craig Mole's given an answer yet. Um, and it's just because I trust them more as operators. There's some hair on Moberg.
Mm-hmm.
Um, who actually just today I found out a lot of it came from the founder, Peter Olpert, who sort of forced them into doing the dividend that led to a death spiral in the equity because they ran out of money and they had to they couldn't get debt because they had no revenues. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, well, let's jump into all the questions here. So, well, okay, we kind of touched on it. Which company has more upside potential, Moberg or Cipher? And from what I can hear from you is, as far as the upside, there's more upside in Moberg because it's more leveraged or levered to sort of global sales. I would argue Cipher probably has better downside protection, but
Yeah, just because,
Moberg
yeah.
has better upside, right? Yeah.
I mean, it's a like 6 times EV to free cash flow. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. For a pharmaceutical company. Yeah, I know exactly. Um, Okay, so here's an interesting question. Who's going to be producing Teclara sold in Canada, Cipher or Moberg?
who's going to be producing Turkla? I don't. So it's contract
Yeah, I
manufacturing.
was going to say, yeah.
So they're contracting the production out.
Yeah.
I think the how the transfer works there is Moberg is in charge of. They're responsible for purchasing that product, and
Mm-hmm.
then they recognize revenue once they transfer it to say Cipher. So from the value from like from the manufacturer to Moberg. Moberg purchases it, gives it to Cipher. Cipher pays them. Cipher starts to sell it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's pretty standard. There's contract manufacturing organizations that do this for a living, so it wouldn't make a lot of sense for either Moberg or Cipher to actually be producing this. They're going to outsource this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Then is Cipher going to be, let's see, is Cipher going to be affected with the terbinafine supply that delays Teclara rollout in the EU?
So the supply issue they're having right now, and they are having this right now, they're running out of stock in Sweden. Um and we don't know the exact estimates because they haven't been posted yet, but we think they launched with anywhere between 40,000 and 80,000 cases. Um, uh, I'm sorry. Could you repeat what you
Well,
said? Was it from Phil?
the key component is, I don't even know how to pronounce it, terbinafine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The delays there, the primary delay, it's not actually like going to the manufacturer and
mm,
getting it in their hands. There's like stability testing and like regulatory compliance,
mm,
like things that just take time to qualify it to sell it in like an existing marketing, like a pharmaceutical that's on shelves.
mm,
It's like a quality control thing.
mm.
I've heard that takes from like initiation of conversation takes 6 months. Um,
Okay.
so I mean, if this keeps happening, like if for
Mm,
some reason the supplier there, I think they just did a PR like 2 days ago,
mm,
that they submitted a supplier to whatever agency that reviews that in Sweden. Um, if that falls through again, that's
mm,
not good.
mm,
I don't know if it would impact the timeline for launch with Cipher because it's going to be somewhere in 2026, and
mm.
it's not a process that takes 18 months.
Right.
So it could. It would affect Moberg more than Cipher.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
yeah.
Gotcha. Um, okay, let me see what else we got here. Oh, here's a quick question. Is Cipher a buy today or should we wait for a pullback? I mean, you're pounding the table here. I want to be
I'm,
clear. I mean,
I'm extremely biased. I mean, I started buying Cypher was one of the only things I bought in 2023. Um, and it was at 3 CAD for most of that year.
mhm,
Um, my income has gone up a lot recently, and so my ability to purchase stocks has gone up. And now I'm at an average of 6 CAD, unfortunately, with Cypher.
mhm,
Um, so I mean, I'm saying yes. But like I'm extremely biased.
mhm.
Um,
Let me bring one thing up. I mean, everybody on here knows that I love to buy dips on these companies that are going, going almost parabolic. Cypher is in the buy range. Like if you look at it from a technical standpoint, it's got a call it a channel that it's trading in right now. It's come back to the buy zone, so the bottom of the channel. So just from a purely technical, even if I didn't know the business, on a purely technical basis, you're in a buy zone right now. I think, the question more for me is how much more discovered can this company get? And I still think it's underfollowed by any significant analysts out there. Canada in general has very, very poor sort of capital markets that sort of understands the life science space. So you've got kind of this double whammy. There you go. I mean, it's not right at the bottom of the channel, but you can see what I'm talking about. Anything sort of around that $8 level, to me looks really, really appealing on a technical basis. So, good healthy pullback from $10. It's had some time to consolidate this latest move from $7, call it to $10. Yeah, there you go. I mean, there's a channel. If you stretch it out, maybe it goes a little bit lower than 8, but you see what I'm getting at. We're well past sort of the midpoint here. And I think, yeah, you're looking at a buy window, certainly anything a little bit lower than where it's at right now. And it's getting size right now. It's getting size, so it can get bigger as these type of deals get bigger and bigger. They get better recognized. They get institutional liquidity that starts to come in, and you start to get the kind of move that we've seen on a number of these stocks that got into size. So I think just purely on those bases right now, this thing's starting to look like a buy. For those that want to get more aggressive, if you think longer term, which I tend to agree with Dakota on a lot of things he said, longer term, this has really, really strong upside with limited downside. And, big enough now where institutions have to pay attention. And with that, you get sort of price earnings expansion and all sorts of metric expansion. So there's a lot of things to like here. You guys know I've liked this company for a long time. And, as it sort of de-risks a little bit more as more information comes out there and institutions can partake. Look, I used to own the stock. It went from 2 to 20. So, this move here from call it 3 to 8, it's nothing. There's huge upside here. So,
Yeah, I mean the Cipher went through incredible amounts of multiple compression. I mean, just incredible. After Absorica went off patent. I mean, at the bottom, it was at a EV to free cash flow yield of above 100%.
Yeah, it was trading below cash at one point. It was insane how cheap it got. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, really, it depends what they buy, because if they go out and they buy like $150 million asset or business, that matters. They need to get that right. But again, really, it's like Terclara is going to be so much of their cash flow if they just leave the business alone. I'm like 80% base case. The drug will be cheaper inherently for patients and like prescribers and whatnot, just because you don't need to use as much as Jublia. So like the pie might shrink slightly if they don't either charge more to make up for that or expand treatment rates. But I mean, it's gonna steamroll the whole market. People like, yeah, I think that's sort of like the disconnect.
So
That I have
let's try to do a little bit of math, because what did you say earlier? The like 5 to 14% of the world population right now has nail fungus, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, we can translate that into Canadian market. There's, I don't even know what the population is now, but 40 million. If we take the low end, 5% of the 40 million is what, 2 million, if I'm doing my math correct. And then, if we were to get any kind of rate similar to what Bosch is selling, can we put 20% to that 2 million? Now you're talking 400,000. 400,000 sort of people that would be using this.
Yeah, Paul, here's the thing. Moberg really messed up their guidance, like badly. They estimated selling less than 1 million units of this globally. Not in Canada. Like they don't make any sense. I've kind of had some people interview Anna, who's running Moberg, and her answer was that we are Swedish and we like to be conservative. So it's just, yeah, if of the people that have made guidance, which is essentially Craig Mole and Anna at the point,
Mhm.
their numbers make a lot more sense. And because it's such a clean competitive market, because like they're only going up against Jublia,
Mhm.
um, once once prescribers see what the stuff does, and I think they're
Right.
already sort of like educating dermatologists and podiatrists from what I gather. Um, it's gonna be really clean. Um, and that's why like I don't care that it's down 20% from it was trading at like a week ago or
Mhm.
whatever, or
Mhm.
that it ran from three to 8 or whatever it's at
Mhm.
now. It's just because this is going to dominate their cash flow statement, and they've been saying this for a long time.
Mhm.
And it's only really now that they've sort of started to spell it out. So that's definitely helping in the discovery process. One thing you did an interview with Craig Mole,
Mhm.
I think like a year ago at this point,
Yeah.
where he said they're going to pursue a NASDAQ listing.
Mhm.
Um, and so, if they do this combination of they get M&A right, they
Yeah.
don't bug it up too badly, and this product is a hit, and they list on NASDAQ, and the idea of treatment rates improving due to improved pharmaceuticals, and improved pharmaceutical to treat this, it's gonna go
Mhm.
crazy.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's sort of where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get you. I mean, the numbers, the little bit of modeling I've done, the numbers are pretty stupid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's how I felt in November when I was looking at Moberg, and it was at like a $20 million market cap, and they
Yeah.
had $70 million in milestones penned out, and it's like this is trading like at a huge discount to like predetermined cash flows before like even counting royalties.
Mhm.
So it was just like this insane disconnect.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. I mean, I've been investing 9 years, and I think in the last three really is where I've started to learn a bit more.
Mhm.
Um, I've never seen anything like it.
Mhm.
And I think it's a combination of Moberg's management, kind of hairy. The pharmaceutical hasn't made its way into the markets in a big way yet.
Mhm.
Um,
It's all, I mean, it's also obscure. I mean, life science, a small life science company in Sweden, it's not like everybody, plays in that sandbox. So,
yeah,
it takes some work to find that type of opportunity. I mean,
yeah,
you can't, yeah.
and the guidance, it doesn't make any sense. They presume so Moberg presumes they presume a minority market share in every single market they're going into, including the
Mm,
ones they're not going to be selling into. So Craig Moll's up in Canada saying they're going to take 100% of the market. The guidance that Moberg has given presumes like 20%.
right.
So there's already like a huge gap there
Yeah.
with the pre-existing market for treating nail fungus. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a confluence of things. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the numbers on the low end look scary good. That's the thing, right? So, it's almost like I mean these are circumstances where the company's got plenty of cash. It's got cash flow right now from an existing product, and I'd say still relatively misunderstood. I mean, mind you, you've done a great job in getting people to understand this business, but if they really, I mean, it's Terclara, like you said, if they come anywhere close to any kind of numbers that they're even predicting, this thing goes a heck of a lot higher than where it is right now. And Craig, one thing I got to say about Craig is he's been very, very diligent with the cash he's had. So I don't see this guy. I mean, I think he's had a lot of opportunities to screw things up, and I just haven't seen him do anything that indicates to me he's gonna, take any wild chances here.
yeah. I mean, he
So
he sat on his hands through the entire rate hike.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I
Incredible.
mean, that actually hurt him, and I know he was getting a lot of pressure from sort of investors to push and do almost any deal because the market was leaving him behind. I think that this is a testament to the kind of, the character of what he's doing and trying to find something that's really going to work here. Um,
Yeah, that's sort of the thought experiment I've done with considering like a deal going bad, because he has sat on his hands, and I think they're the largest shareholders, so
mhm,
they have a lot of skin in the game. I'm
mhm,
not too worried about a deal going too bad. I don't want them to go into neuro.
mhm,
They brought that up on the conference call.
mhm,
Um, uh, but I mean that's just because they've done not even just Terclara. They did an awesome job with piclidenoson. That license, so that drug, um, there's going to be some issues with reimbursement in Canada once it comes time for that to go to market, and this is several years down the line.
mhm,
Um, but the safety profile of that drug is fantastic. There's 4 primary oral medications for moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. One just got launched by Bristol Myers Squibb, which is why I know there's going to be reimbursement issues, because that drug was compared to the efficacy of injectables to treat moderate biologics,
mhm. Yeah.
which you're just never going to have the same efficacy profile. But that drug is really good. About 10% of patients that take it, they have full control over their plaque psoriasis. And most importantly, um, there's no real like nasty side effects, which isn't true for every other common like methotrexate. It's not a comfortable
Mhm,
um, drug to take.
mhm.
So I think they've done an amazing job in derma, and I want them to stick to derma
The
because of
sixth
that.
German.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's jump on a couple of other questions here. So Phil says, can you walk through the milestones that Moberg is eligible to receive from their various partners like Cipher? And I think it's Bosch for Europe.
so the owner of the license in Europe for ex-Scandinavia, because Alderma owns the Nordics,
Mhm.
and they kind of have like a historical relationship with Moberg.
Mhm.
It's not just a licensing deal between an unrelated party, but it's Bayer, and Bayer owes them,
Sure.
I believe it's 48.5 million euros, and these are sales-based milestones predominantly, I believe. There might be some regulatory, but I think it's mostly sales-based. Um, and that's the same deal with Cipher, who
Mhm.
I believe owes them $10 million, and some
Mhm.
of it will be paid up front, but the majority again is sales-based. Um, and to add to that, Phil, they had one for $50 million. There was 45 million in obligations remaining with Taisho Pharmaceuticals in Japan. That it was a pharmaceutical company, obviously, but they're restructuring their business, and management actually just took the company private, and so that like a new derma drug was kind of outside of their like strategic purview, so the license got returned. I expect off of the phase 3, because they're going to run an auction for the US. Bosch might actually become a buyer because they own Jublia, and the patent's
Mhm.
coming up and they're staring down to zero because of Terraclara. Um, they're going to run an auction in the US. I imagine there's probably going to be a large milestone involved there. Maybe not. Maybe if they're just given a really good royalty deal, they'll take that. But then also relicensing in Japan. So there's at least 2 more potential milestones on the table just from relicensing the product in Japan and the US, which are the two highest value markets
Mhm.
for Moberg. Um, you know, it if Cipher had the capability, that if they thought they had the capability to sell this in the US, I would be totally on board with them trying to own that drug
Mhm.
for the US. Um, but yeah, it's in total it's around $70 million that
Mhm.
are in total milestones.
Okay, cool, cool. Okay, let's talk about what can go wrong. Where do you see the downside? Where's the risk? What can fail here?
Well, I mean, Cypher's obviously it's more conservative just because of the
Mhm.
existing free cash flows, and like I can't stress this enough. What's his name? Francis Foreigner. I mean, he's not crazy. The uh Epirus, that was phenomenal business.
Mhm.
There's no capex. That they've maintained their share off patent. The Craig's right with this new Absorica LD. It's not going to take their market, and there might even be a little growth baked in there with this benzene scare that just happened
Mhm.
recently
Mhm.
because this um
Let's talk about that because we mentioned a few times. So I can't remember what's the it's a well-known um, drug used for acne.
it's basically all
There's a handful of
there
really well-known acne
oh
drugs, and I
oh
can't remember the names now.
I like Claricel. It's hundreds of products.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
basically it. Yeah.
So what's
Um,
happened is data's come back to show that it's uh, could could cause cancer, could cause
benzene does cause cancer.
yeah.
So the worry is that this um, common product in acne medication that breaks down in warm conditions when stored in warm conditions. I think that there's if you search it online, if you search benzene acne, it got syndicated in a million journals, so you'll be able to find it. Um, but basically, they did stability testing and they found um, that a lot of these common uh, acne products, th there's this active component inside these acne medication decomposing into benzene that becomes an aerosol, and it's many levels. It's a lot higher than what's approved by the FDA for like the safe. I think the limit is 2 parts per million. Um, even if that doesn't like materialize in like
Hmm.
action by like regulatory bodies, and Health Canada announced that they were reviewing this, I think like a month ago. Um, that's gonna do things to people's psyche
Yeah,
because they're
yeah.
they're thinking about these creams they put on their face, and they just heard everywhere in the news that um
They may or
their
may
acne
not cause
medication
cancer.
might
Yeah,
might give them cancer.
yeah.
So that might do something to Epirus because it's a retinoid and it doesn't have this component into it. It's hard to
Hmm.
tell. It's preliminary, but we'll see. We'll see in
Hmm.
the next year, if it does anything. But yeah, getting back to Francis's question, I mean, it's a capital light business at like a 12% yield on its enterprise,
Hmm.
and it's going to cash flow that for the next 15 years.
Hmm.
Um, so the management's aligned with you in that they're retiring stock and returning capital in like an efficient way, and it's not a super expensive business. So yeah, it's not crazy. And the cash generation profile is amazing, and it's what attracted me to it, the business in the first place before
Hmm.
I found all this crazy nail fungus stuff.
Hmm. Gotcha.
Right.
Um, okay, let's keep going. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, so Greg says Cypher is a growth stock that trades at a single digit PE even after going from 3 to 8 times CAD. Yes, agreed. We see that over and over again. A company that keeps growing, stock goes up, and everybody seems to think it's expensive, even though it's kind of grown into, or it hasn't grown into its growth profile yet. Uh, Okay, so Trev says, is the product for sale in the rest of Europe? Outside of
It's just,
Sweden, is
it's
it
just
is
in
it
Sweden right now.
just in Sweden, right?
It's approved for sale in the majority of European countries. And that happened, you know, months ago. But the launch, Bayer is essentially waiting on this new drug label because
Mm,
if they can go to market and say you only need to apply this once a day for the first 8 weeks and then weekly application, um, that's a really strong competitive advantage for them just because it's not it's not going to be as expensive, it's not going to be as burdensome, right?
mm,
This is a good point to bring up because people might know Medexus and Almaril partnered with this drug. I don't know the brand name of it yet, but it's called P3058. um, they are being forced into going to market with once weekly application because I guess just how they structured the clinical trial. Um, Now, that product may have been competitive with Terclara if applied daily for 64 to 72 weeks because the mycological cure rate got up to like, it was like 68%, I think. The once weekly application is different. The responder rate, like having it visually do something to the nail with once weekly, it's like 20%, and the mycological cure rate is like 10%. So it's not competitive with existing topicals. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes it really clean in Canada because there was this question mark surrounding this product and if Medexus was going to be able to compete with Cypher and take share. Um, but it's not competitive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, not good. Okay, so listen, you've spoken to Craig probably more times than we have now. What's in his head? Like this thing's going to be cash flowing like crazy. What does he do? Does he do another share buyback? Does he go out and try to license more products? Or does he issue a dividend? What do you think he's going to do with his cash?
well, I probably should try to reach out to management more.
Mhm.
They never respond to me.
Oh, I don't
Um,
know why. You've done probably a better job than any of the IR initiatives they've done. So, yeah.
but I hope it looks like they've remained active on the NSIB, because we got
NCIB, yeah.
we got we,
Mhm.
we got an update there. Um, if I'm right, honestly, about Teclara, I,
Mhm.
I don't even want them to buy a company. I just want them to, I just want them to do as many SIBs as they can
Yeah,
uh, before this thing takes off.
yeah.
Um, but I can understand the appeal of wanting to diversify their company, and especially if they can take over like some Nasdaq company
Mhm.
and and get a listing that way. I don't know the dynamics of that, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And just for everybody who's listening, Cipher did do a share like they've got an active NCIB, so they're buying back their stock, but the last purchase was at $9.17, so actually higher than what it's currently trading at, and that was on let's see, I think it's March. Yeah, it looks like it was March 27th, so probably about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. Um, and sizable amount of shares. It was 25,000, just over 25,000 shares. So almost $250,000 worth of purchase for cancellation here. So they're obviously bullish. Paul, you asked about buying at this level. Company shares trying to indicate that it's a good buy here. Um, Okay, so I saw you, yeah, you answered to this. Francois said, am I crazy to think that even without MOB 15, with the current cash generation, the company still looks undervalued? Yeah, I mean, you're buying a business here that's already cash flowing. It's pretty cheap, and you've got tremendous optionality. I think Dakota's done a great job to sort of make it pretty clear that Declara, as far as optionality, it looks like if it's going to hit, it's going to be a grand slam. It's not going to be a double or single. It's a grand slam. Like this. Again, my back of the napkin calculations on some of these numbers looks pretty crazy. So, okay, so Paulo says, Paul, what do you think of them buying Biosent or a merger? I don't think they need to. I think if anything, um, there's way more inherent growth in just doubling down and almost buying their own business. So buy their own stock back before they look at buying something. Like I love BioSign, I love the management team there, but they don't have the optionality, and I don't think they have the growth that this potentially has. So if they're bullish on Teclara, you buy the crap out of the stock. That you buy yourself. You cannibalize yourself, right? Look at a snake eating its own tail. I think that's what you want to do here. Okay, Trev says, why didn't Bosch or Bayer apply for the franchise in Canada? How did Cypher get this? Like, what did these
Uh,
guys do?
I didn't actually go back that far and like look at when the licensing, like the details surrounding the licensing deal, because I think it happened in like 2018. It was pretty
Mhm,
early in the development cycle for this drug, which is why like it's impressive
mhm,
because the first, I think the first phase two that happened, the drug profile wasn't as impressive. It's easier to get
mhm,
weak numbers on smaller cohorts,
Mhm.
Because I think they measured like a 56% mycological cure rate, but
Mhm.
it was 24 people. So, you know, you have two people, three people that don't experience mycological cure, and you skew that
Right.
from 70 to
Right.
50
Right. Right.
easily.
Yeah.
Um, so and I mean that's kind of why like I'm really impressed with their ability in Derm because
Mhm.
you know Terclara has the potential to be like globally speaking, like you know this this pharmaceutical could do $10 billion in net sales.
Mhm.
Um, and it's impressive to identify something like that earlier. Why
Mhm.
Bosch didn't get that, I don't know. Um, it's that's
Well,
maybe something I can
yeah.
investigate.
I mean, a lot of times, like whether it's Bosch or Bayer, in Canada, the market in Canada might be too small for these guys, or do they have the same presence in Canada they do in some of their other markets? So they're gonna focus on other markets before they focus on Canada. Canada from a life science sort of market is not that big, right? There's significantly bigger ones out there. So if you don't already have a franchise or a team of salespeople here and you got to build it for a brand new product, yeah, it's not the same. So if I would suspect, Bayer is big in Europe for sure. Bosch is they're pretty global. Um, they're they're likely going to focus on their bigger markets first, right? That's probably what's the scenario here. Um, so Russell says, Paul, what numbers did you calculate? So I want to ask you, Dakota, to help me with my numbers a little bit. You talked about in Canada, you're expecting that they're probably going to sell this product at $100 a box. And I think you said you can expect that on average about 4 nails are going to be necessary, 1 box per nail. But how long does a box last? And
So
what annually, like what's the annual spend on average do you think it's going to be for somebody in Canada?
um, I could start with the end market.
Yeah,
So the highest the end market could be for this product, if everyone was to treat their nail fungus, it's 450 million CAD around there. Um,
per year.
yeah, and I maybe,
Okay, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah.
so this is a 5 milliliter container, and you can kind of work it out because this math already exists out there floating
Mhm.
in the real world with Jublia, which comes in a 4 milliliter container. There's 80 drops in that container, so 5 milliliters is 100. They're going for the first 8 weeks um, to be daily application. You're gonna be using 1 drop per nail. I don't know if it's standard with Jublia to do 2 on a big toenail. I don't know
Mhm.
if that's going to be the same for Teclar or not, but just assuming 1. Um, the first 8 weeks, it comes out to about 50 drops, and then the remaining the year like the full length of the prescription lasts of weekly application. It comes to 1 box a nail. Um, so if it's 100 CAD all in, you know the and it just it really this thing is really sensitive to where treatment rates go.
Mhm.
I mean that's the thing that blows this out of the water. You hit Craig Moll's estimates backing into the market. This is a 25 CAD stock with no multiple expansion.
Mhm.
You expand treatment rates, you know, no multiple expansion, you're getting to like 60 CAD, which is that's a
Mhm.
really good outcome.
Mhm.
Um, so it's sensitive to that. Um, One thing that's interesting about this condition, there's a confluence of factors that increase um, infections, and who gets this? Diabetes, peripheral
Mhm.
arterial disease, which lowers the flow of blood at the
Mhm.
peripheries, which weakens the immune system, really increases the rate of infection. And
Mhm.
these spores and the fungus, they live in people's environments. So reinfection rates, they're somewhere in the range of like 30%. So what might actually end up happening here is that a large percentage of the sales of Terclara don't come from patients actively treating their nail fungus, but people on maintenance therapy, where they're applying this once a week to prevent reinfection
Right.
of their nails. Um, uh, I mean, it's you can do the math.
Mhm.
on potentially where this goes. I don't even think it's necessary at this point.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
just just like looking, just a brief overview of what it means to replace Jublia.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay, good exercise there. Okay. Francois says, call me Frank. No worries. French Canadian here. All right, Frank. No problem. Okay, so Paul Kozak says there's already a cream available. What makes our application method work so well? Paul, you may have missed it a little bit, but it's the delivery mechanism, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Dakota, maybe talk a little bit more about that.
yeah, the innovate. I don't know the exact science behind how the vehicle is penetrating the nail, but that's what it is. It's the vehicle that they have that is delivering the terbinafine into the nail does a very good job at actually penetrating the nail and getting it into the nail matrix. And that's what you need to do to cure the infection because the fungus burrows down like deep into the nail where topicals can't penetrate. Um, and terbinafine is a potent antifungal, so it does a good job at curing people with their fungus.
Mhm.
That's like the two bits is they paired this potent antifungal that everyone's already heard of because it's in jock itch cream. You could buy terbinafine right now if you go down to like Walgreens or something, and you'll see it for like $10 or something. The reason you can't put that stuff on your nail and cure your fungus is because it doesn't go through the
Doesn't
nail.
get there. Doesn't get to where it's got to go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, so looking forward, what sort of catalysts or milestones or anything, what do you think investors should pay the most attention to sort of understand that things are going in the right direction?
Definitely the phase 3 readout, whatever that is going to be. I'm trying, so this is, you might laugh. I'm trying to
Mhm.
organize like a Motley Crue-esque clinical trial to front run the readout.
Yeah.
So far, I have 4 patients lined up, and I'll be going to Sweden here soon to do this for someone
I
I know that
love
has
this.
California.
I love this. I love this. You're gonna do your own phase 3 trial.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we're gonna, we're
yeah.
gonna what we're gonna do is titrate the dose to see if the complete cure rate method of lower titration works
Hmm.
in not hydrating the nail. Because those are the two things that people are gonna look at. Physicians can read past the complete cure rate because what that means is an aesthetic of um of the nail, like that it looks fully normal.
Yeah.
And I was, I've been reading about this for months now. There's a great analogy I saw with this is kind of like if you have very bad acne and if you take isotretinoin, Epuris, and it cures your acne, but you have
Mhm.
scarring, that you're not completely cured because you have
Right.
scarring.
Mhm.
And the nail takes 12 months to grow. So if it's a 12-month window and you have this like fungal infected nail that like morphed into the structure of it, um, it's a weird endpoint, but
Mhm.
I get it. Um, I'll volunteer for your trial. That's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, if you want to go to Sweden, it's over the counter. It's $40. Um, I would check if there is any stock before going, because they keep saying they're out. Um, uh, but
I
yeah,
love the concept here. We can have like this due diligence tour, fly a whole bunch of us old people there that might have toe fungus to Sweden, and we're gonna see if this stuff works.
yeah, but I
You know
said,
what? That's due diligence at its greatest, man. That's what we should be doing. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Well, Cole, I think listen, if anybody's or anybody listening has got other questions, we sort of run out of the questions to ask Dakota here, but I mean to summarize everything, I mean you're obviously pounding the table here. Subject to the stock fluctuating a little bit here, you still think it's a great buy. Um, this is a business that's cash flowing very nicely, sitting on a whack of cash. Clearly, the management team over the last several years have been very disciplined allocators of capital. They're still buying back stock, even at levels slightly higher than where it is now. Um, I can't remember the last insider purchase, but there it is. No, they've been aggressive buyers of stock. Like they did that big share buyback at 607. Um, the special issuer bid. Was it
Oh,
607?
I
I
think
think
they
it
got,
was.
I think they got it for, it was in the fours, I think.
Oh, actually, you know what? I think that's when they canceled it. Yeah, sorry, 369 it looks like. No, that's not it either.
Or,
That's just them
or
keep buying back stock. Yeah.
I,
Um,
it's
yeah,
it's in the fours.
465. Sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
465. They bought back 1.29 million shares, roughly a $6 million purchase. I mean,
It was a single quarter's cash flow.
yeah, and obviously a good buy. It's almost doubled. Well, it's doubled since then. So they've made good money on that purchase there. No, I mean lots to like here. I mean, who covers it right now? Do you know which analysts in Canada cover it?
Um, I don't. I know there was a price raise. I don't really pay much attention
Yeah,
to.
well, yeah, we shouldn't actually. Most people shouldn't, but I'll dig that up. I'll find out who the analysts are.
Yeah.
It might be Bloomberg, and they tend to
I know
gravitate towards these.
someone did send me a note, um, 4 or 5 months ago when it happened, when
Mhm.
the initial price target increase happened, and there was no mention of Terra, which is
Oh, really?
no,
Oh,
none.
wow.
Um,
Wow. I mean, that goes to what I said earlier. I mean, the following sort of the capital markets following in life science companies in Canada is absolutely dismal. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So that wouldn't surprise me that they've missed something like that. But hence why we have you on. Like we've got you on instead of bringing any of these analysts on because clearly you know the company better. Yeah, a couple other questions came in here. How often can they technically do an SIB? Um, I don't know if there's any restrictions in terms of how many SIBs they can do, but they do have to get they've got to get uh, exchange approval before they can issue one. So yeah, I'm not sure. I should dig that up. There is I know when it's just a normal course issuer bid, there is a limit of what they can do, but an SIB, I think significantly larger and open to what the company's interested in doing. But um, I would think that in this case they're not likely to do another SIB unless there's a significant sort of change in the business. They're better off just doing a normal course issuer bid. I think there's way more flexibility in doing something like that right now. And then Russell says, has anyone checked if David Muir has this problem? I'm sure he'd enjoy Sweden. David Muir, I don't, that's gone over my head, so I'm not sure.
News, Paul.
Russell,
ABC News.
what's that?
ABC World News.
ABC World News?
Yeah.
Well, he's out there saying he's got toe fungus.
Well, no, check. He could go to Sweden with Dakota. We all buy in before he goes.
That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna send, half dozen of us old guys. Again, that I don't think I've got toe fungus. Maybe I do, but let's just get a whole bunch of old people going to Sweden and have our toes dabbed here and see what happens.
Sounds good.
Yeah. uh, let's see what else we got here. There's Trev. Trev says, I'm in Europe with toe fungus. How can he help? He's in the UK, so maybe we've got our first, first participant from our group here that can join everybody in Sweden. There you go. Dakota says, travel to Stockholm, find one box per nail, apply for 8 weeks, take pictures. Uh, uh, Okay, so Jennifer, what's the difference between an SIB and NCIB? So an SIB is a significant issuer bid. So that's when the company actually says, look, we're going to buy up to a certain percentage or a certain number of shares, as opposed to like all in one transaction. So they'll say something like, we're going to buy up to 1 million shares at $6, all prorated. If they get 5 million of selling, but there's only 1 million of buying, they're going to prorate it to all the participants. Or they typically would come out and say we're either going to spend X amount or we're going to buy back a certain number of shares. An NCIB is something where it's usually done over the course of a year. It's usually you're allowed up to 5% of the outstanding, or I believe it's 10% of the float. So there's a calculation has to be made, and you get that number, and then you apply to the exchange for that, and then you have to do it over the course of a year. And there's some restrictions in terms of what you can do on a daily or sometimes monthly basis. So the NCIB has more flexibility over time, but the SIB it allows you to buy a bigger sort of chunk all at once. So if a company thinks there's a significant milestone coming down the road and they want to try buy as much as they can early, then an SIB makes sense, especially if they think the stock's really undervalued, or if they want the ability to sort of, again, flexibility in the event that a stock pulls back here and there, then the NCIB makes more sense. So that's the major difference between the two. There you go, Greg. Another candidate here. I'm in Europe with fungus, but happy to bring it to Canada for a small contribution. There you go. I don't know if he means happy to bring the fungus to Canada or happy to bring the product to Canada. We'll have to get clarity on that here. Good. Dakota, anything else you think we should know about Cipher?
I mean, that's really all you need. I mean, piclidenocin's several years out, and there was an incidental finding with that drug from I believe, Italian nonprofit where they thought it's doing something for this rare disease called Lowe syndrome. Like maybe 5 Canadians have it. You know, this is I mean, piclidenocin's already several years out. But I mean, if it does something for Lowe syndrome, you know, that'll matter because they'll be able to reimburse it rare drug rates, and you know, they'll have a ton of margin from that. But yeah, I mean, it's the trial readout matters for Cipher. The acquisition matters potentially. More to the downside. I mean, if they do an okay transaction, you know, it's whatever. But if you know, if they mess it up, that's where it would bite you. And that's really it. I've been paying attention to Sweden right now, just to see how the launch is going. And I'm going to try and track what happens to treatment rates there with to Canada, because you can buy data from the pharmacies and the wholesalers to see how many units are going out the door. Right. But other than that, that's
and how sort of I don't know how communicative is Moberg? Like, do they keep a decent? Do they do a decent job of sort of updating the market and what's going on?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm like a social activist in a sense. I don't have the money to take over Moberg. But I put a lot of attention onto the company. I mean, I already know I've essentially secured an anchor investor in the United States who runs a fund that I think he's going to buy like 5% of the company. He's been talking to Anna almost daily. He just relayed because he's been talking to their banker, trying to like understand the whole picture. I mean, that's where I got the information earlier from how Peter Wolpert was the one that forced the dividend. He was the previous founder of Moberg. And that death spiraled the equity because they sold all their cash flows. They removed over half the cash, and they were only in phase 2, and they were running this trial across continents. So, you know, it was bad. Yeah, Peter Wolpert made Anna look worse than she is.
Right. What's the current market cap of Moberg?
So right now it's interesting. Right now it's around $100 million.
Okay.
But there are these warrants, and they're weird. They're going to be priced at 70% of the volume weighted average price during a single week in May, and then get exercised in June.
Oh, wow.
Thinking through the dynamic of that, you know, without complete information, you don't know who's trying to do what. Because say you assume you don't want, because the warrants are a capital call, they don't need to be exercised. Say you don't want all the dilution to happen, and you don't want all these shares to get issued, and because the people that have them, they are the individuals that participated in the raise last summer when the stock was at like 4 SEK, and they were given the warrants in addition to the stock that they purchased for like 5 sec or something.
Mhm.
They have the majority of the warrants, or should.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, there's multiple scenarios, but there's a case where someone that doesn't want the dilution to happen plumps the hell out of VWAP so
Mhm.
that people can't afford to exercise the warrants. There's a situation where someone becomes a very, very large owner of the warrants over time,
Mhm.
pumps VWAP. They At that point, they're basically just putting 70 cents of their own dollar onto the balance sheet, and they become a controlling owner of Moberg, more or
Mhm.
less. They wouldn't be able to take it private just because the laws are favorable. But this is a liquidity event of like 17 million shares, um, potentially. And there's even like a case where like, oh, someone doesn't want Moberg to get funding, so
Mhm.
they pump VWAP and then they crash the stock 30%. So none of the exercise happens because why would you pay more for a stock than it's trading at?
Mhm.
And there's like a month period in there. So where it
Right.
trades over that duration
Right.
inserts uncertainty. But the fully diluted market cap, uh, it's going to be in the range of like 150 million. I don't know. I think it's
Mhm.
down today. Um, uh, but the actual dilution event, because the warrants are a percentage of where it's trading at, it's going to be a large cash infusion.
Mhm.
And if you actually look at the cash burn of Moberg, um, outside of the phase 3, they need like $2 million a year in revenue to
Mhm.
to make money.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
Wow.
I mean, there's like 7 people at the company.
Mhm.
Uh,
Wow.
so they don't need a whole ton. And on the basis of uh, when they did the capital raise last year, their banker and Moberg was underwriting $10 million in cash from the warrant exercise
Right.
to fund continuing operations and the launch of Terclara globally. They're going to get like 30 million right now.
Right.
So it really depends where VWAP goes, and what happens with the exercise.
Mhm.
Why would Moberg structure the warrants this way? I don't know. It's definitely interesting. I mean, I don't think they expected me to make this go viral in America.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting structure. I've don't have a ton of experience with warrants. I typically
Mhm.
shy away from complex balance sheets. So I've never seen like an example like this
I've
before.
I've never seen anything like this either. It's
Um,
it's it's quite odd. And I mean, when I see any kind of floating ability for conversion at a discount, you always get real worried because it's usually a death spiral of some kind, right? The flip side is somebody can, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody can jam the stock down at extremely low prices, and then somebody can basically, exercise. So let's say somebody shorted the stock right now from, what's it, at 32 sec right now, but shorted all the way down to 5, right? The way you cover is by getting access to those warrants and then covering, exercising those warrants at a 30% discount. So you're actually getting even cheaper, but you shorted it significantly higher. So that's sort of the old death spiral type of financing you used to see. So it smells a little bit like some sort of death spiral
yeah,
financing.
it's weird, and
No.
it could go a lot of ways depending on who is an actor right now.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've come across, I think, 4 separate funds that are active in this
Mhm.
stock now. Um, and one of them, they don't want the warrant exercise to happen because they
Mhm.
don't think it's necessary, even though I don't think that's true.
Wow.
Um, if they push their way on uh in the interim period,
Mhm.
what they would do is they would push up VWAP and then sell the stock down so that there's
Sure.
no
Yeah.
there's no
So
spread
yeah,
between
exactly.
exercise.
It
So,
trades both. Yeah.
but yeah, that's the uncertainty with that structure right now. Fully diluted, it's a little less than 47 million shares.
Mhm.
If the exercise takes place, I mean, the phase 3 is wrapping up. They don't need a lot of money. Short of like going to the US and advertising, which is 2.5 years away.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be launching in Sweden. It's scaling up in Sweden, and then it's going to be in Europe and Japan and all these other markets. Like Moberg doesn't need a lot of money.
Yeah.
Outside of like just this like fixed cost to fund the remainder of the trial readout.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's sort of the cap structure, and it's sort of like the uncertainty left.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Gotcha. Listen, Dakota, this has been fun. I think we covered a lot. Dakota's a sharp guy. If you're not following him already on Twitter, I highly recommend that you do. Um, some great videos of him joggling as well. So well worth following just for that.
Yeah, I
So yeah, go for it.
I've been getting harassed by
Mm.
Swedish retail investors.
Swedish retail investors?
Yeah,
They're dangerous, those
they're
Swedish retail investors. You got to
well,
watch out for them.
they're mad at me, and I learned recently that through my blog I've basically doxed myself, like my home address, my phone number, like everything.
Okay. Yeah.
So for the now I've deleted my Twitter, but you can find me on left field, on Twitter. My identity isn't just this. That's
There
family.
you go. Okay, so
Yeah.
don't harass the poor guy. Okay, he's got enough people harassing him. But I do suggest if you're interested in any more information on Cypher, this is the guy that you want to talk to get the nitty-gritty. So reach out to him any way you can. Dakota, any other way? And you've got a Substack as well, I understand.
I was going to say also big congrats from Small Cap Discoveries and Paul and myself on going full time at this, Dakota. I think that's
Yes.
incredible.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's been awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the support has been crazy. I mean, the blog grew to 100,000 ARR in 4.5 months.
That's
So
fantastic.
it's scaled pretty
Well
quickly.
deserved. By the way, well deserved. Not smoke and mirrors like I see in a lot of people. Well deserved. Amazing. Yes, amazing call on Cypher and Moberg. You're also a big fan of Zcore, by the way.
Yeah, I mean the product makes sense.
Yeah.
The margins at scale when they stop growing. I mean, the margin profile will be nice if they're able to maintain pricing the way it is. There's When I was initially doing research into Zcore, because they scaled up in Canada and they kind of like dominate that market, I was able to find a few developers in Canada that use their towers and have used them since they basically did the business pivot. And what happened? With the real catch there versus just like security personnel, is that the towers qualify with course of construction insurance as having someone physically on site. It is equivalent in the eyes of the insurer, so they're able to save a ton of money. So this is a product that is saving their customers money, and there's a large runway. And I mean, they took the stock from it's 10 backed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Perfect. Listen, we're running out of time. But like I said, really appreciate the time you spent with us today, Dakota. And we will be watching out for you when you're on and off Twitter. And yeah, definitely next time you've got a good idea like this, let us know first. And then we'll invite you back. All right.
Thanks,
So
Paul.
we've been speaking here with Dakota. I call him the number one guy on the Cypher, world's greatest joggler. Great to have you, and we're going to catch up with you real soon.
Okay. Thank you so
Okay.
much, guys.
Cheers. You bet.
Good night.
Bye now.